This is the iPhone SE, a brand new iPhone geared towards budget buyers and those not quite ready for the more modern design. It has a home button and thick bezels, but the same processor as the $1,100 iPhone 11 Pro Max. It also only costs $400. Hey, how's it going? I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and today we're taking a look at the $400 iPhone SE. Is it worth buying? To get the answer out of the way, yes, the iPhone SE is 100% worth buying. That being said, it might not be the iPhone for you. This is the cheapest iPhone Apple's selling, and with that, there are going to be some concessions. It has a small 4.7-inch display that retains the home button. The camera is from the iPhone 8, but a bit better in terms of quality thanks to the A13 chipset. This is a small phone, and with that comes not amazing battery life, but then it is also $400, plus it can take portrait mode photos, which is impressive. This phone is the iPhone 8, but with a much better chipset and moderately better camera. That's all there really is to it. If you're considering getting an iPhone 8, the SE is now the phone to buy. If you're coming from an iPhone 6, 6S, or 7, the iPhone SE is the obvious next step. If you have an iPhone 8 right now, the iPhone SE is an upgrade, but I will say that it's not that much better besides being more future-proof and adding portrait mode to the camera. I think this phone is a spectacular move on Apple's part and is absolutely worth picking up. Do you disagree with me? Do you think $400 is just too much for that old design? Well, to be honest, your opinion doesn't really matter in this case. Think about it, most people in the market for this phone isn't going to know the difference between this and the iPhone 11 Pro in terms of the design. In fact, a lot of them probably would prefer to keep the home button. And then if you're that person, looking at Best Buy or wherever for a phone, and you see this one for $400 and it has the Apple logo on it, you're probably going to be interested. This, of course, is just all my opinion, and I might be completely off base, but I do think this thing is going to sell like hotcakes. I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up outselling the iPhone 11 Pro. But perhaps I'm getting ahead of myself here, so let's take a step back and look at the design of the iPhone SE. It has an aluminum frame and glass body. It's basically identical to the iPhone 8, but with the Apple logo centered. We have three color options: white, black, and red. What stands out about the white is that the front of the phone is black, which means for the first time since the iPhone 3GS, we have black bezels on a phone with a white back. At least when it comes to iPhones with the home button. I think it looks great, but I couldn't help but get this red color. And so far, no regrets. It's gorgeous and really stands out from the crowd. So to speak, of course, there aren't too many crowds around right now. The front of the phone is very familiar, with thick black bezels and a home button with Touch ID. Touch ID is amazingly fast, and I actually forgot how great it really was until I started using the iPhone SE. While for the moment I do prefer Face ID, there are some real advantages here. You can unlock your phone without even looking at it, so by the time you do look at it, you're already in. Really handy at the desk. There are some drawbacks to Touch ID as well though. If your hands are wet or greasy, you're going to have some trouble, and if you're wearing gloves, you're out of luck. But for the most part, Touch ID is pretty awesome and does have some advantages over Face ID. The display here is 4.7 inches and has a resolution of 750 by 1334 and pixel density of 326 pixels per inch. It's also LCD, which isn't as nice as the OLED found in the iPhone 10, 10s, and 11 Pro, but the quality of this screen is practically identical to the 10R and 11, just smaller. This is a small phone, the smallest Apple's selling right now, and for some, that size is going to be the biggest problem. If you're coming from a plus-sized iPhone, such as, the 6 Plus, this is going to be an adjustment, and honestly, I'd recommend you go to the iPhone 10R or 11 instead. The 10R comes in at $600 and has a 6.1-inch display, while not actually being physically a whole lot bigger thanks to the small bezels. The 11 Pro Max is 6.5 inches, but then of course you're going up to $1,100. If you don't like the newer design, you could wait till the end of the year to see if Apple releases an iPhone SE Plus, which has been rumored, but of course no guarantees that happens, and if it doesn't, then I'd go with the iPhone 10R. If the SE Plus does happen though, it'll likely slot in at $500. How you like the size of this phone comes down to personal preference, and for me, while I like how comfortable it is to use it one-handed, it just feels too small. But of course I was using the 11 Pro Max, so that's expected. Another issue with the small size is battery life. The iPhone SE has been okay for me, but keep in mind I'm not using it as much as a real user would. I think for now it's going to last most people the day, assuming you're not doing a lot of streaming, but in a year or two with a small battery, you might start to have some problems. We do have both wireless charging and fast charging, although no fast charger comes in the box. That said, because the battery is pretty small, the 5-watt adapter actually does an adequate job. Unfortunately, we don't have 3D touch anymore, so it's officially gone from the iPhone lineup. Haptic touch, or in other words long pressing, is okay, but I do really miss 3D touch. It was just so satisfying to use. Let's talk about the camera. According to iFixit, the 12 megapixel sensor we find here is the exact same one as in the iPhone 8. However, thanks to the better chipset, we should be getting better photos, and we have more options like portrait mode. Portrait mode can be a bit hit and miss, but for me it's done a pretty good job, especially for a $400 phone. Because it is software only, it can have some trouble with depth, but the actual cutting out of the subject seems pretty spot on for the most part. As for normal photos, I'm liking what I've been seeing with the SE. The iPhone 8 didn't have a bad camera, but I do think this is better. Most shots are turning out crisp and natural looking. It's not as good as the 11 Pro or anything, but I think for the vast majority of people that'd be in the market for a $400 iPhone, this will be more than good enough for the foreseeable future. We can also film in 4K at 60 FPS, and that looks great. This is 30 FPS, but still, we do have 60 FPS if we want to use it. This is probably better than most Android flagships. iPhones are just way better when it comes to video, and so the SE is no exception. The selfie camera is 7 megapixels and can take portrait mode selfies now, despite no Face ID. That means this photo is done completely with software, and honestly, it's pretty good. Color me impressed when it comes to this phone's cameras, particularly with the portrait mode features. Considering this is all coming in a $400 iPhone, it's certainly nothing to scoff at. So while the camera isn't holding its back, what's really pushing this phone forward is the internal hardware. We're looking at Apple's A13 chipset, which right now is the best they've ever made, as well as 3 gigabytes of RAM. This means better performance than the iPhone XR, technically, although I doubt you'd see any difference in day-to-day usage. Still though, it's amazing that this $400 phone is pretty much just as fast as my $1,100 iPhone. When it comes down to it, the iPhone SE isn't going to be for everyone. The value is here, but a lot of the features you might want may not be. It's the older design we've been seeing more or less since 2014. The camera is good but not great. It's got an LCD display, but for those who aren't picky and just need an iPhone, this is absolutely the one to go for. It is really hard to argue with $400. I think that's what it really comes down to. If you're thinking the iPhone SE is for you, I'd strongly recommend you go for it. The only exception I think is if you currently have a bigger phone, and if you do, it'd probably be a good idea to go to the XR or 11. Again, there are rumors of an iPhone SE Plus potentially coming out later this year, and so if you're really attached to the home button design, I'd wait to see what happens. Honestly, I don't think there's a whole lot else to say. This phone is basically just an upgraded iPhone 8, and that's okay. I think it really works here. I actually think Apple has the perfect iPhone lineup right now. You've got your high end in the iPhone 11 Pro for $1,000. You've got your iPhone 11 and iPhone XR at the mid-range for $600 and $700, and then you have the iPhone SE at $400 for those looking for a cheaper option. Now, I would like a $500 phone, and the iPhone SE Plus would slot perfectly in there if they do end up making it, but we'll have to wait and see what happens there. So what do you think about the iPhone SE? Are you thinking about getting one? Let me know in the comments down below. If you found this video interesting or helpful, maybe hit that like button and consider subscribing for more content just like this. You can follow me over on Twitter and Instagram at 91_tech if you'd like to for some reason. And with that all being said, thank you so much for watching. I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and I will see you all next time.